Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who is watching today's webinar. Today, as part of this new episode, Technovation with Ahmad Javaid, we brought another very important topic which is quite trendy, hot, relevant, and with the high need to be discussed and to understood that what exactly are the challenges which organizations, individuals, governments, people they are facing towards data privacy. So today, this discussion is about data privacy and the evolving global landscape, where we will understand from our experts panel what are the regulations being developed, enforced, and practiced all around the globe from different geographies. So before we deep dive into the discussion, when we will just quickly have a round of introduction, starting from Amir Saab. If you kindly introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum all. My name is Ahmed Siddiqui, and I'm working for Oman Airports as a cybersecurity consultant. I've been CISO to various banking institutions back in Pakistan, and nearly I have 20 plus years of experience, mostly with the banking. And previously, I was working with U Microfinance Bank, Samba Bank, and National Bank, Dubai Islamic Bank.
Pleasure to have you, Amir Saab, on the panel, and we'll certainly like engage the audience with your, to learn your experience in the context of the banking from a data privacy standpoint. Adnan Saab, if you kindly introduce yourself.
Thanks for the invitation, Ahmed. Adnan Ahmed, head of ICT and CxO, working at Ornua, a dairy cooperative headquarter in Dublin, Ireland. We are the largest exporter of Irish dairy products to 110 countries. I've been CISO for Ornua for last 7+ years. My experience mostly is in the manufacturing sector. Before joining Ornua, as part of another food manufacturer based in Ireland. So it's last 10, 12 years I'm mainly involved in manufacturing sector and working on the data privacy, data changes, which I'm seeing very closely from EU perspective. Thanks.
Pleasure to have you on the board, Nansab, and looking forward to learn the European perspective of the data privacy, which is quite, I would say, stringent and strict these days, I believe. So
Yeah.
our we do have our last panelist, Barrister Sahar. If you can introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Sahar Iqbal. I'm a corporate lawyer and a partner at Akhund Forbes, which is a top-ranked law firm in Pakistan. So,
Pleasure to have you.
as part of my practice, I advise clients on data privacy regulations.
And certainly we're looking forward to hear and learn a lot from your point of view. What are the practices within the Pakistan in terms of legislating the data privacy aspects of it? So, without any further ado, my name is Ahmad Javaid, and I'm CEO of Cytellite, offering digital trust services within the Middle East from past couple of decades. So, I'll start the discussion by posting my first question: that what is the current evolving global landscape of digital privacy? It's an open question. Anyone would like to start with?
I think we should run the cycle as it is. Definitely in the last 2 decades, we have seen a lot of technology innovations, a lot of digital banking, a lot of digitization of businesses, regions getting closer to each other, a lot of data getting on the cloud, and a lot of incidents where data has been used without the consent of its holder, who is the like my data. I don't know where my data is traveling in between countries and organization. So Barrister Sahar is also here. There were a lot of legal and state related things that they don't allow data to travel from one country or one continent to another continent. So to standardize these things, we have seen a lot of data privacy domain getting out, a lot of domain specific to data privacy and protection. If we talk about Europe, we have GDPR, the gold standard of data privacy and data protection. And if we talk about Middle East, we have seen a lot of regulations like privacy and data protection laws that have recently evolved. And the most importantly, that the things that has currently been evolved is the DORA thing. The Europe is going after that DORA compliance, and from January 2025, I think it's all mandatory to have it compliant. So just because of a lot of people joining social platforms, a lot of information data being shared on there, a lot of corporates going on cloud, a lot of digital banking services used between continents, used between countries. So it has become very important to understand what is private data and what data can be shared, what data cannot be shared, and what is the PII, how we define a PII, and where this PII can be kept if we talk about cloud things. So over to other.
Exactly. I mean, I think you are very rightly highlighted the very basic fundamental reasons and the drivers of the organizations to trigger this data privacy programs. So I'll take the discussion forward with Adnan Saab. Like from a European standpoint, how do you see this landscape for the digital privacy getting evolved?
I think data privacy is evolving at an unprecedented pace and is driven by the technology advancement. Technology, you can think about AI, generative AI especially, is going too fast than the regulations have to follow. But from EU perspective, the EU GDPR regulations, which was enacted back in 2018, was considered as a gold standard for companies which are global, like the one I'm working on. We have to make sure that all of our sites where the data protection regulations are applied are following the stringent regulations. So what we do in our case, other than Germany and California, we say as long as you are EU GDPR compliant, you don't have to worry about local laws. There may be changes around breach regulations, and also the another thing I've seen is around reporting. It could be data protection office to the local authority, but as a gold standard, once you achieve the GDPR compliance, it's most likely the other laws are following the same one. I've seen the same one in Indian regulations coming up. The Within the EU, the another thing we call it GDPR plus, which is the German regulations. Normally, the standards at the in Germany is much stricter than the whole of Europe. Anything that you would like to pass on to end users will have to go through the worker council, and the same thing applies in Spain, but it's more lenient than Germany. So the things are changing from two aspects because of the new technology. That's one aspect. The another aspect I would like to highlight here is people are more aware. I've seen this in Western world. People are asking, where is my data stored? Who is keeping that data? And is it being used for unlawful purposes, or is being used to drive business without the consent of the end users? And it's not only happening with data privacy, it's happening about the transparency. Uh, Especially, I'm seeing it around food transparency, where the data is coming, how you're producing a particular food production line. These are being discussed and asked as well. So it's not only happening, I would say, in EU. EU is taking the lead, there's no doubt. Recently, Brazil has launched their own data protection law that sets the guidelines for collection and use of processing and storage of data. So there are challenges. I'm seeing there are challenges, especially around global companies who have to deal with number of global regulations. But um, I would suggest if you stick with one of the main core laws like GDPR, it's more easier. And making sure you have one standard, Another thing I'm seeing here in Europe is companies are more and more going towards ISO 27001 regulation, which allows us to make sure your ISMS is protected. But there are specific ISO regulations. If you start applying those regulations, then you will be able to manage and show the resilience in your whole data protection aspect of the data. The recent one I'm seeing it in EU is EU AI Act coming up, which is talking about how the EU will protect the individuals when they are using and making decisions based on the device which is being produced based on EU generative AIs. So even if companies they plan to start using some of those products and create their own products, they have to apply for the same EU AI Act as well. So our responsibility is to make sure we can do the balance in security, privacy, and consumer confidence, because it may be coming from the consumer side of it. They don't want to buy your products if they know that you're not protecting their personal data. So it's coming from the end users, which is the consumer. It's coming from the regulations perspective. That's helping you to make sure you have one comprehensive framework that you could comply with multiple countries as well at the same time.
Exactly, like thank you for painting the landscape for the digital privacy around the globe. Particularly, the as you rightly said that the European Union is leading all around the globe with the enforcement of GDPR, where last year we have celebrated the fifth birthday for GDPR as well, and just even immediately after that, we happened to hear about the EU AI Act, which is a proactive response towards the growing concern about the AI chatbots collecting the personal data without your consents and everything. But let's hear out now from Sahar the legal perspective of this personal information and the privacy within Pakistan in specific and in general around the globe.
I think we've had a very helpful explanation both from Adnan and Amir. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it's a slightly woeful story. We've had a draft data protection bill in place. Well, not in place. It's been circulated. It was circulated a few years ago, and as lawyers, we were expecting it to become law very soon. It hasn't. India passed its data privacy law, I think, earlier this year or maybe last year. Normally, what happens is if India passes a certain piece of legislation, Pakistani parliament follows suit. This time we didn't. And I think we can all understand why this particular piece of legislation hasn't been passed, because I think we've been so busy in other laws and amendments to the constitution, etc., that the parliament hasn't really focused on this law. And the other reason is that um, a few years ago, 2017 onwards, we saw a flurry of laws. We saw the e-commerce policy and a number of laws. But then we went into COVID and pandemic and the lockdown. And since then, we've had one challenge or the other, and the sort of macroeconomic condition hasn't really stabilized. I think that's the reason why this law hasn't been passed. So, as Pakistani lawyers, our law firm gets a lot of questions from international clients. And it's interesting to note that all the questions that we get on the status of data privacy in Pakistan is from international clients. As somebody, I think Adnan mentioned, global companies, multinational companies who have their own sets of data privacy law and who want to know what the law in Pakistan is. So the bill right now is in final form. It's been reviewed by everybody, everybody's commented on it, but it's not being passed. Right now, if somebody asks how is data protected in Pakistan, there's no single or focused piece of legislation. There's certain, so SBP, State Bank of Pakistan, has certain regulations which governs financial institution when it comes to data protection. And then we have the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, or we have certain sections in our CPC's Criminal Procedure Code, Civil Procedure Code, which regulates data protection. but these are fragmented laws. We need one single body of law and then rules and regulations under it, which is in draft form, which hasn't been passed. I think today's topic essentially is global data privacy regulations, and that's been a buzzword. It's trending amongst lawyers. I mean, when I speak to our friends in international law firms, they're advising on it. It's a very routine thing there. But sadly, in Pakistan, it hasn't been passed. And let's see if this bill ever sees the light of the day.
Now, inshallah, very soon we'll be hearing out very good positive news. Being that said,
Hopefully,
considering the criticality and the seriousness of the
yes,
topic as well, being so, what do you think? Like, from your standpoint and from your knowledge, there is two aspect of it. One is the corporate sector, which has to be ready, while dealing with the personal data and implementing the regular related privacy controls, complying with the global standards. But on the other side, the judiciary has to basically come up with their own relevant compatible practices as well, such as like considering the digital form of evidence in case of privacy breach and all that. So where do we stand from that standpoint?
that's a very good question. So, from the corporate perspective, these are usually companies who, who want to make sure that the data they collect of their customers, etc., are protected. As far as the judiciary is concerned, I mean, I'm sure all of you must have heard of the Qanun-e-Shahadat Act, which is the law of evidence in Pakistan. That, together with the Civil Procedure Code and the Criminal Procedure Code, it regulates the protection of data which is presented as part of evidence, etc. So I think when it comes to judicial proceedings or court proceedings, they are following the existing law. So there hasn't really been a new law to regulate the protection of data in proceedings. And this is why I'm saying it's imperative that the data protection bill is passed, so that once it's passed, other sectors, as you rightly mentioned, whether it's the judicial sector or the other corporate sectors, then what we're going to see are various rules and regulations drafted pursuant to the Data Protection Act, which will govern judicial proceedings as well as other sectors. So right now,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, the court can probably, it will depend on case to case basis what a particular judge or the bench uh, sort of directs. We don't have anything concrete at the moment.
right. So I think that's you highlighted a very important aspect of, like, as part of the organizations which are facing the such kind of privacy breaches and these kind of things, and they're facing such challenges to deal with such incidents and respond to such breaches proactively. So Amir Saab, what do you think that as part of, like, the organizational efforts in order to achieve such compliance to the privacy related regulations, what other challenges you see or you observed around your current corporate sector?
I have local disturbance.
No problem. Adnan sir, if you would like to take
No,
up
no.
this question, please. No.
Yeah, I can pick up. Um, so I think the challenges we are seeing, I was thinking maybe let's go through the type of challenges and what we could do as an individual, as an organization, to make sure how we can overcome those challenges. So what we have seen, I think it's quite clear that the law is in the final stage in Pakistan. That's good news. It about priorities. And once the priorities are set, it's easier to get these regulations passed. But I hope that regulation will be passed. What I have seen in other countries who are outside EU, they're still following quite a substantial amount of laws from the GDPR as well. So that's good in a sense for companies. They don't have to start looking for individual specific area, as long as they are filling the common requirement, and then they go to individual ones if they need. One of the common challenge I normally say it when I'm dealing with, because the company I work with, we are global. We have office in Europe, but also outside Europe, in US and also in Middle East. So we have to comply with different regulations. But the approach we use it is go with GDPR, and then the area where you have to make some changes. For example, I gave you an example of Germany where we have to go through the worker council. Same as in Spain, we have to go to the worker council, and if you have employees in California, we have to follow the CCPA California regulation as well. And I heard the Saudi government has passed similar regulation. I'm not quite familiar with it, but we will have to review with the implication for us. So first area I'm saying around the challenges, if I summarize, is complexity and consistency. To make sure, one of the complexity requirement I have seen quite often is reporting requirements. Because if you're a global company, you have to report differently based on the requirement of individual countries. Sometimes it becomes more difficult. I'll give you an example. If there's a new directive coming in EU called NIS 2 directive, Network and Information Security Directive, because it is a directive in EU, it has to be transposed into individual countries' law. So Irish government will have to transpose into law. They can make certain changes as well. So the major change they could do it is reporting authority. So we have business, for example, in Ireland, Spain, and also in Germany. So we have to review the same law in 3 countries to make sure that we are compliant from reporting authority perspective. These individual states may have some leverage to make changes as per their own need as well. So when EU is bringing a directive, it means that for us as a company, we'll have to look into the laws when it becomes the law in individual state to make sure that we're complying with those ones as well. So I would say is the complexity and consistency to make sure the law is consistent as possible. And when you're dealing with a global scale, then it becomes more difficult. The another area is operational financial impact. You have to keep the local site onboarded. So one example would be is if I am trying to implement the latest Saudi data privacy law, I have to get local guys onboarded to make sure they can comply with the law. They know that where is the reporting requirement, and also work with the gap analysis. So you have to get the local site onboarded. So Sahar has mentioned the right thing, whereby if you're dealing with the global companies, they still have to comply with their own global laws, but they need to make sure data of an individual in Pakistan is also protected. So it is a little bit different. The financial impact, the penalties is different, and the localization and transfer restriction could cause additional challenges as well. So if some countries, especially we have seen in Germany, the data of individuals should not go outside the country. Um, so it brings more challenges for global companies, that where are they going to host it? There are different rules that you have to follow. Is doable, but you have to follow some additional guidelines to transfer data outside EU as well. For example, we have 2 types of data protection agreement. One is within the EU countries, one is outside EU countries. It depends on which country you're dealing with. We haven't never transferred data to Pakistan, but that will be a big challenge for EU countries to transfer individuals' data to Pakistan because there is no local privacy laws. It's a lot easier in India because they have the local privacy laws. So these are the challenges global companies will face. So you have to come up with, in my opinion, if you're looking for how do we resolve it, make sure that you have a global data privacy framework, incorporating the local changes that you are incorporating from those countries that you're operating. So make sure you have a global law, but you have buying from the local site, and also making sure that for local sites providing the gaps analysis. But you have to follow with one data privacy law. So in my opinion, if you follow GDPR like law, you are 80-90% done, and then you look for smaller changes. For automation thing, the compliance thing, you need to look into, can we automate that process and do the mapping of different laws? We use ISO 27001 internally, but we map it against different regulations available. So that makes sure that you're not writing the same policy multiple times. You're trying to map it multiple regulations and only looking for the
Exactly.
changes that you have to apply.
Yeah, very rightfully said. The organizations, especially when it comes to the information exchange within the territory, outside territory, and cross border. I mean, that's
Yeah,
where the actual challenge comes for the organizations, and becomes difficult for adoption of these data privacy, the standards. So Amir Saab, coming back to you, I mean, just to you know highlight like organizational challenges in adopting these practices. And as Adnan Sab added on, the some of the um, some strategies which following which like the organization can come overcome these hurdles and challenges while adopting these. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, a lot has been said by Adnan Saab, and he has elaboratively managed it. Uh, Two important things that we usually face, one is the cooperation from the internal stakeholders of the organization. Usually, when we start to do this normalization of the requirements, mostly people don't agree that we comply. We used to comply with the international standards or GDPR and these things. Initially, because where Adnan Saab is sitting, it's a very mature corporate organizations. They understand these importance, but mostly if you deal with like Pakistani corporates, so they have a very hesitant behavior towards adopting the controls. So first, when GDPR was introduced in the world, most of the organizations in Pakistan, they were like, okay, it's for the Europeans, and we don't have any European company. But what they didn't understand that it is not about European companies; it's about European citizens. So if anyone having a European dual nationality and he has the accounts or he used to do transactions with any Pakistani bank or organization, they have to be like GDPR compliant. So a lot has been, a lot of effort has been applied by the, senior, the CxOs, who has to work on this data privacy implementation. And talking about 27001, now, there's one thing that the new standard of 27001, it has strongly emphasized on these privacy and data protection things. So they are saying that if you have to become a 27001 compliant, then you also have to look into 27701 as well. So most of the organization, they are saying, no, why we need to look into 27701? Where ISO 27001 is saying now that you have to see 27701 for the privacy controls, because most of the privacy things are not mentioned in that. Other thing, when you start working towards the DPIA thing, data privacy impact assessment, and you have to normalize international laws with your country laws and with your organizational policies and procedure. So a lot of challenges has to be faced by the CxOs of Pakistani firms, while conversing these requirements to their stakeholders. Because as a CxO, as a data protection officer, I cannot achieve anything if my stakeholders won't cooperate to that. So on part of vendor management as well, like I'm working in a region which is strictly working on many data law like PDPL. He said the Oman also have PDPL. So most of the vendors we cannot work with because they don't have their local cloud with us. So I won't name any vendor here, but only a single vendor has deployed their local cloud here. So we cannot use like big giant companies products just because they don't have any local cloud presence. And if you talk about KSA, Saudi Arabia, so a lot of investment has been made by the big cloud giants just because of these privacy laws. So if I see there's a vendor who's providing good services, but I cannot adopt that vendor just because my privacy laws has to be catered on. So a lot of challenges. It's a lot of entropy as of now. What I see, if you talk about Europe, if you talk about the USA, Middle East, Asia Pacific region, they are producing their own laws. Though if we normalize them, they all are same. But when we get into like localization things, the consent management things, like vendor management things, we face a lot of issues, and we have to we are remained with only few vendors if we have to pick like good services. So a lot of entropy is there, and I think world is still getting with this AI thing. The world is still confused where to apply what, and we are doing just basic stuff for the privacy management. Still, data is getting compromised. Still, data is getting leaked. Still, controls are being bypassed. Yeah.
No, indeed. I mean, I think we will definitely touch upon the AI factor, which is I kept it for the later discussion. Coming back to the main thing, which as Adnan Sab highlighted, and you emphasized on the fact that many of the regulations and the standards basically increases in complexity The only way forward is for the organization is to choose or pick and choose one relevant standard, and come up with the implementation approach with the relevant controls mapped, so that we can find out the common controls to be implemented, and cater the delta later as far as the relevance is concerned. Because you mentioned ISO 27701, which is just an extension of a current ISMS, and that is recommended for those organizations which are 27001 certified already. And on the in other side, like, I mean, there is a NIST privacy framework as well, and there is the GDPR further variants are coming, and those companies which are not GDPR compliant, and now they have been forced to comply with the European Union AI Act, that increases even exponentially increases the challenges to comply with this as such standards. So I'll take the discussion try to bring another twist into our discussion by posting my next question to Sahar. Is the we considering the growing concerns about these data privacy, the usage or misusage, I would say, of this personal data, considering the data sovereignty, how are the countries balancing these privacy rights? What's your take on that from a legal perspective? Everyone, every citizen should have a clearly defined rights to protect its own intellectual property and so forth. So, from a legal standpoint, how do you see this paradigm, fitting into our discussion?
Um, that's an interesting question, and at every point in time, we've had we've had debates as far as balancing rights and laws are concerned. So in today's world of technological advancements, we are discussing how do we balance the right to data privacy versus freedom to express or freedom to own intellectual property. A few years ago, there was a discussion on balancing the right to privacy, not data privacy, privacy versus freedom of expression. So today's discussion is an extension of decades old debate, I would say. And I think it also depends on it'll differ from country to country. So maybe in a European country or maybe in the US, the debate and the discussion will be a little more sophisticated. Maybe the uh, feelings around protecting data privacy will be stronger there than here. So, to give a small example, if a celebrity's right to data privacy has been breached in the US and that celebrity is an A-list Hollywood celebrity, you'll hear a lot about it compared to one of our celebrities in Pakistan, their rights being breached. Maybe we won't speak about it. So I think as somebody, I can't remember who, but as somebody mentioned at the beginning, it depends on the country's priority. It's a question which has been raised in some countries, but I think we've had so many debates and so many sort of bigger debates over the years on balancing rights and freedom in different parts of the world that this is a part rather than a whole discussion in its own right. And where we are right now, given technological advancement and given that the countries are earning revenue from technological advancement and people are also finding employment in the technological sector, um, the debate is fairly manageable. So we don't hear a lot of hues and cries when it comes to balancing these rights. That's what I feel.
No, I mean, as you very rightly said, like, there is an element of, like, the from a rights perspective, the usage of someone's personal information for their corporate benefits again needs to be considered, that what are the ethical boundaries given in that state or that country, that whether it is allowed or considered, good or bad, or legally allowed or no, such as you rightly said, like, if we consider the personal information of a Hollywood actor is different than using the personal information of our local actor. So Adnan Saab, and I'll take a discussion with you because from a European Union perspective, the use of this personal information with the definition of these ethical boundaries, how do you see these ethical means, or the in the context of regulations, society, and social values, these ethical rules are being defined? Because using the AI chatbots, I started collecting the personal data without the consent, and I started using somewhere else, but it's considered unethical in the European Union sector. How do you see all these, the puzzle solving out for you?
One major change I see in European and non-EU countries is the common person is highly aware of their privacy rights in the Europe. So as I mentioned initially, that the pushback is not only coming because you have regulations, it's also coming from your consumers. They are aware of their rights. They want to know how their personal data is being used by a company, and companies don't want to take a risk by selling that information. And then once consumer became aware of this, you can lose your customers. Plus, because of these stringent laws in EU, especially Irish Data Protection Office is very strict on those ones. And you may have heard on news around billions of dollars being fined, not even millions. We're talking about around the data privacy breaches under EU GDPR laws. So first thing is around the consumer is very well aware of, and thus we have to educate our people in Pakistan as well. They don't really know their privacy laws. I'll give you an example. I was checking on there is an FBR app. I think it's called Texasan or something. You can enter your NIC number, and then you can find out the person is filer or not. There was another system within that, an application available where you can provide the NIC number to give you full information about that individual. I was surprised to see that how this is even this these kinds of things are unheard of in EU. That you give one piece of information and it will give you full information. I can find out someone's name, date of birth, and everything by only passing on the NIC number, which you give it to hundreds of different places. So it's awareness not at the government level, and also the same is end users level is not there yet. So that's one thing is around education, which makes life of the practitioners, law practitioners, more difficult because you don't get these kind of complaints from the end consumers. They don't really know their rights. Here in EU, consumers are aware of their rights and they exercise it. So companies are well aware of if they misuse the data, what are the implications? They could be penalized from the data protection office, and also they don't want to lose business and don't want to be in the press of mishandling the data. But companies are still doing it, and it's like you still have to make sure that you comply with these laws and making sure that the protection of individuals' data is protected. The another thing I would say when we are talking about protection of data is not only what the data is being used, is you have to self declare what the purpose of that data. That's very important. So I can collect data, it doesn't mean that I can start using for 10 different purposes, whether it's commercial or non-commercial. So that's
Right.
also very important.
That's exactly where the other aspect of it. That's part. I would personally consider that as part of the overall public awareness of their rights in terms
Yeah.
of using the personal data. That what is the purpose of the usage, and that usage needs to be more transparent. Actually, I would like to take Sahar's opinion on
Yes.
that particular aspect of like ethical values and the value system within society. Because when we are talking about ethical usage of that personal information, each society have that's ethical values are linked with some religious value system or something. For example, usage of alcohol, that which brand of alcohol ABC person is used, that is quite a personal information, and that's commonly used for marketing purpose in Europe, but for us on our side, it's not considered ethical at all because it's not within the religious boundaries. So allow me to take Sahar's input on this thing, and then I'll come back to you.
Yes, in fact, I was going to speak out of turn because what Mr. Adnan said hit close to home, and he made very valid points. The first was that, and this is not just for data privacy. I think generally in Pakistan, citizens are not aware of their legal rights. We have, and I'm sure all of us have heard it. Pakistan has a lot of laws. We have so many laws and so many good laws regulating each and every tiny aspect of the country and governance. But the problem is that these laws are either not implemented or they're not implemented in the best interest of the country and its citizens. Sometimes they're misused. And then we have some laws which were passed in the before Pakistan or a century ago, legacy laws, and the punishment, the fine or penalty stipulated in those laws are actually not deterrent. So there are fines of say 100 rupees, 50 rupees, that doesn't matter. The other thing is, and again, Adnan Saab made a very good point, something which I was also considering a few days back. Here, it's very easy to obtain information. We've seen personal information being obtained uh, on publicly as well. So, for instance, Mr. Nan gave an example of FBR, Federal Board of Revenue, and it's true. You insert NIC number and you can actually get information. This is supposed to be very personal information. Similarly, our companies in Pakistan are regulated. We have a registrar of companies. It's very easy to apply for a copy of the information submitted by private limited companies. Now, one would think listed companies are open to the world, they're public, right? They choose to publicize their information. But here in Pakistan, you can also obtain information about private limited companies. So I think that balance, and you mentioned, sort of striking a balance between ethics and protection of rights. We need stronger implementation. We need awareness. We need stronger implementation. But the problem is that even citizens, and the other thing that happens in our country is if there's if the government, if the regulators feel that there is a breach or violation, they will immediately cause a blackout. So that's a very extreme action to take. So that's something that as citizens we've gotten used to, and I think that is also why that we don't. First, these laws are not publicly available unless you go online and you hear about it from somebody. I hope all of those who are hearing our podcast today, they will Google it up. What are their rights in Pakistan? And once they do Google it up and they see what rights, and they do have a lot of rights, right? But what are they going to do about it? They can't implement it themselves. Will they go to the regulators to get it implemented or enforced? So, lots of fine lines and fine balances we need to strike in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, and that, it requires a lot of effort to run the awareness campaigns all around I think, the different sectors within the country in order to enhance the awareness and let them know where and what sort of regulations are available and they are meant for them. So coming back to the main aspect of the role of legislators in activating these privacy regulations and all that. So I would like to, considering the time factor, I will want to come back on this aspect by taking the new direction of AI. So in order to do that, I post my question to Amir Saab, every technology, as we know, just brings its own new risks. Any new technology has its own risk, and the people are adopting it right, here and there without properly assessing the risks around. And there are a lot of, the growing concerns about the privacy aspect as well, particularly considering the AI related technologies. What's your take on that? Your organizations, what strategies organizations should consider while addressing these privacy aspect of it or careful adoption of the technology, I would say?
Well, a very need of time question is this. Actually, this AI thing has just evolved, and as of now, corporates still don't know, other than using the APIs of certain platform, what other AI-based technologies can benefit them. So we have heard a lot of instance where you have seen people's fake videos going around, and fake voices going around, and they are going. The problem, Barrister Sahar is also here. They don't know where to file a complaint. They just go to like FIA cybercrime and they say, okay, we deal with cybercrime. It's something related to AI. We don't know what to do with the AI, and there's a complete chaos. So to manage the things, ISO 27, ISO 42001 has just been introduced to the world, and we are still evaluating it. Corporates are still evaluating it. The countries, they are applying these rules. If you talk about a very renowned AI-based platform, they have been asked to go through this standard and standardize their requirements, so that now whoever is using the APIs of certain AI platform and who is offering the APIs of AI things, they both have to get compliant with this 42001. And I believe, like what Barrister has been saying, that the Pakistani community, the people there, they have like a procrastination thing. They keep a lot of important things on the back burner. It shouldn't be there. And what we need to understand is that's the main thing where we can bring foreign investment. If we are talking about bringing a lot of foreign investment and we are not making proper laws to safeguard their data, nobody will come to us. And in all the initiatives, this should be the top priority: the making privacy laws, making AI based laws, making cloud computing laws. This thing should be the first priority of government if they have to bring the investment. Now investors don't come just because you have low labor, good labor on the low prices. They will not come just because you have huge good mountains and all that. They will not come on that. They are coming to Gulf because Saudi Arabia has become the first country to comply with the AI standards. So we have to take things very seriously if you're talking about Pakistan, because now with the introduction of these AI privacy cloud computing things, the globe has become just a small village. And if we don't take care of these things, we will be some unknown figure in that village, unfortunately, which we have become somehow. So
I'm
yeah, yes, sir.
No, I'm sorry, I was just going to speak out of turn, but I think what you've said is probably the most important point in today's discussion. We were actually, a few years ago, there was a lot of interest in Pakistan as the next frontier, right? So even as lawyers, we were getting a lot of interest from all these global multinational companies who had sort of invested in other jurisdictions, and they had heard about Pakistan as the land full of promises and potential and resources. And at that time, this was a few years ago, before we had the change of government, etc. We did see some policies and some laws published by the government. And as lawyers, we were very happy. We thought that this is just going to open a floodgate of interest from foreign investors, etc. But the problem is that unfortunately we've been pushed back. We're a little, we're on square one or ground zero, and now other countries have been able to take the lead and to sort of bridge the gap. So the gap between us and other countries, and you've given the example of Saudi. And Saudi, we've always had good relations with Saudi, brothers, sisters, etc. But their focus is on completely different things at the moment. We're offering them the same thing we've been offering for decades, which have become a little outdated. They want to focus on innovation and technology. And unfortunately, our track record hasn't been great over the last couple of years to prove that. So, very important point made by you.
See if things turn towards the good side.
No, I would say that, I mean, the efforts have been taken all around the region now, considering the ever changing landscape and demographics here in the Middle East market as well. I mean, the focus has been shifted towards, for example, like, all this region was completely focusing on one source of revenue, which was oil, petroleum. Now, considering the change, the shift which is happening
Yes.
now, it has been opened up on the different sectors of the energy. In Qatar as well, if you allow me to share some insights, is the Qatar Petroleum Company has been changed to Qatar Energy now, and focusing on solar and the other green type of energies as well, focusing on electric vehicles. So big net said the shift is, I think, triggered through a global paradigm. I would say, I mean, it's not only the region; it's the main trigger of this shift of focus is, I think, mainly through the wars and the economy stability as well, sustainability factors as well, which everyone have to look into the other endeavors of surviving in becoming a very challenging situations, considering the geopolitical situation of the region as well. So in this whole effort and race, unfortunately, we are being left
We're
behind,
lacking.
or we are being slow, where we need to pick it up. So and knowing the time factor, I mean, I would like to just start collecting the final takeaways for the audience, which quite a lot has been said. So let's start from Adnan Sab, your final takeaways and what you would like to give as your advice to the organizations, the privacy leaders who are listening to us today to ensure the effective implementations of these strategies.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the data privacy, take this in your benefit rather than think about this is another headache for the organization. And the way you could do it, you could showcase this to other organizations and to consumers how serious you are about the data privacy of the individuals, your own employees, and also for your consumers. This goes long way. I've seen in Europe, if the companies who are really taking care of the personal data, they go a long way. I'll give you an example. For any sensitive discussions, so I'm a member of an organization called European Cybersecurity Organization. They use Signal rather than WhatsApp or any other chatting channel because they do trust on Signal because it's open source and it's highly sensitive for personal data privacy thing. So companies do can leverage once they implement. Don't think this, okay, I'm going to spend this much money. So that's one takeaway I was saying. I think this is a positive aspect. You can showcase how good you are and take the lead, especially even from Pakistani companies' perspective. Make your consumer aware. The awareness has to come from the government and also from end users. And companies have corporate social responsibilities to let their people, consumers, know what their rights are. Until they don't know, they won't ask for it because people don't know. And from government's perspective, they have to make it easier and publicize more what are their rights, how they can request for that right. So one example I'll give you here is we receive very common request. It's called data subject request under GDPR. So you can, let's suppose you are going to a website and buying something and you're buying for last 5 years, you can go to that website and ask for information to be presented back to you. So they have to give you the whole information they are collecting for you and what purposes, and you can request this. Same as you can go to any hospital, their website, and say, I need all of my medical records. I don't know even if it is possible to go to a hospital in Pakistan and say, I need all the records, and they have to pay. Here, there is no cost to consumer. Make it easier. Let them know what their privacy rights are. So that has to be at the government level to make sure that there is. But from the company's perspective, say it's a corporate social responsibility, let people know what their rights are so they can protect. And companies will be more aligned towards protecting because if they don't protect it, they will be singled out. So I think it's a joint effort. I'm saying companies will have to do their responsibility and also from government to make sure the laws there, as Barrister mentioned, Barrister Sahar, that there are already laws in place. It's about implementation of those laws and making people aware of that there are laws available. And this is going to grow if we need in Pakistan to bring more investment. This is not going to change. There will be more laws coming as we are seeing it, and then there will be more stringent regulations to implement those laws. Otherwise, you won't be able to get foreign direct investment. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Adnan Sab, and definitely. Um, for the organizational, like the leaders, I mean, they need to consider these practices of making the public aware about their rights, and that's part of their education and marketing as well. So from technology leaders point of view, Amir Saab, what's your final take on the tech leaders who are considering the new evolving technologies, considering the blockchain, quantum, whatever is coming on the way, opposed to AI? What's your final take and advice on particularly for these kind of matters?
This data privacy and data protection is all about how good housekeeping you have made in your organization. From the technological perspective, hire a good data protection officer or data privacy officer. Give him the full autonomy to identify the data, good data scanning inside the organization, which is holding what data you should have in complete inventory of it. Do a good, very comprehensive data privacy framework. Make a very comprehensive data privacy framework, and before making that framework, try to analyze what laws implications you could have if you are doing what kind of a business. Ask all the business stakeholders to sit down on a table and advise you what business they are doing, and what services they have been taking and giving to the other organizations. From the vendor management aspects, analyze what data you are collecting from the vendors and what data you are giving to them, and who is compliant on which standard, and do a comprehensive work on that as well. And after doing this, all the things, make a very comprehensive set of controls, monitor them, and make, like Adnan Saab said, if you need to request on certain queries, you should have clear communication inside the organization, who can respond what, and who can keep what kind of a data. Unfortunately, in we our organization in Pakistan, because I have deal a lot with these kind of a things, we are still struggling with access management and the internal information issues as well. So we have to get ourselves mature and invest a lot of trust on this data privacy and data protection thing. Technology is not the only thing. If I am using a renowned DLP solution, and I'm using a renowned data classification tool, this will not solve my problem if I don't have a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment, if I don't have a set of controls to comply with that.
Exactly. I mean, having a comprehensive risk assessment methodology in place, assessing the privacy gaps as well as whatever the technology specific, the loopholes as well, we're going to help us, addressing that effectively. So, Barrister Sahar, I mean, your final takeaway and your specific advice to the lawmakers in this context.
Yeah, just to round up and pick on a few things, Ahmed, which you also mentioned. You mentioned that there's been a shift. You gave the example of Qatar, and you mentioned there's been a shift to other forms and other sources of energy. And you're right. As a country, our focus was, we were more industry heavy. We were focusing on the power sector, on textiles, etc. Unfortunately, during the last few years, and it pains me to say this, that has been eroded. We've seen a lot of factories shut down. We've seen a lot of mills. We've seen the manufacturing sector take a hit and setback. And these were very capital intensive industries. And we're professionals, right? I mean, for us, it's also hard, but our work is skill based. So we can always move around. But for those who had spent years and decades of their lives establishing a factory or an industry and investing millions of rupees and dollars in importing machinery, for that to shut down, that was almost like a chapter of their life shutting down. It's not easy to go around and set up industries and factories. Um, the other thing, the other buzzword that we keep hearing, and our country has been affected by it too, is climate change. Um, and we've also seen during the last few years, because of economic and political instability, we've seen a lot of brain drain. And that brain drain has been in the technological sector as well. I mean, I speak to people, IT professionals, who are searching, who are desperately looking for good resources here. And they say it's disappointment. They say that all of them have been recruited, they've relocated, and they've been recruited by in Middle East, etc., where there is a demand for such people. But then those people who, and I've seen that amongst my own family, the people who've left Pakistan for greener pastures, they haven't done that completely happily. They've done that because they don't see opportunities here. And we hear about Silicon Valley. India has Bangalore. That's sort of like a Silicon Valley in India. Can we imagine a Silicon Valley in Pakistan in the next few years? No. Unfortunately, we're light years behind because even the success and growth we were able to make in the last few years, that's been eroded. And we need to now start from scratch almost. First, whatever has been eroded infrastructure, we need to establish that. And then comes the more technologically advanced sectors. I think somebody gave the example of healthcare sector where is it possible to obtain all our health records? No, when you go to the hospital, I think the other day I had joined some podcast and we had somebody from, I think Ahmed, you were there too. We had the head of IT from Dr. Ziauddin Hospital. And this is the point we mentioned that when you go to the hospital, half of the time their system is down. I mean, you're there because you're not well or somebody with you is not well. The last thing you want is a system slow down. And the last thing you want is for your health records not to be accessible. So I really request and implore the government, if anybody is hearing, that please, put your differences aside. Every time we feel that we put the past behind us and now we're on the road to stability, we see something new happening. So we all need to, in the greater interest of the country and its people and the future, and look at the world. Look what's happening in Middle East. It's very, very easy for us, Pakistan, to make progress. We just need to put our personal differences aside, sit on a table, implement these laws, and also encourage the people who've gone abroad to come back and work for the country. So I'm sorry if this was a little emotional, but yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, and definitely it was very much needed. The contribution from every one of us, like whatever we feel towards our beloved country, and whatever the implications are happening due to careless, I would say, the behavior or procrastinated behavior from the legislators as well, which are like considering this current today's topic as well, that this is not a nice to have thing. This is needed, and today it needs to be legislated in order to ensure our contribution towards the global economy, and where we can contribute towards Saudi or Middle Eastern markets. Or there was used to be a time when we were the biggest service provider to North American market, and today we are nowhere. But happening that's I mean the hoping for the best, and keep continue. We will be keep continuing our contributing by sharing the spreading the awareness and sharing the right knowledge, spreading the awareness for these needs through these panel discussions, webinars, and so forth. And that's where the Technovation of Ahmad Javaid episodes are basically initiated to highlight the very need of emerging technologies which is coming on the way, and will be bringing forward for our audience in the next episode related more advanced topics such as quantum computing, AI, blockchain, and some space technologies as well. So, with this said, thank you so very much with our panelists and the audience who have actually attended or seeing us lively. Looking forward to have you engaged in the next upcoming episodes. With that thing, thank you very much, Amir Sab, Master Sahar, Adnan Sab. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.